Have you ever had a day where everything just felt empty? You woke up, made your coffee, and sat in the same chair you've sat in for years. Nothing was wrong exactly, but nothing felt right either. That's how my mornings started to feel after I retired. I had all the time in the world, but no idea what to do with it. One morning, while staring at the steam rising from my mug, I heard a soft knock at my door. It was Mary, my neighbor. She's 72, always wearing bright scarves and a smile that makes you feel like everything's going to be okay. "There's a free art class at the community center," she said. "For seniors like us, you should come." Now, I hadn't held a paintbrush since 3rd grade. I laughed and told her I'd think about it. But later that night, as I turned off the TV for the 3rd time, I thought, why not? The next day, I showed up at the community center with no expectations. And what I found there surprised me in a way I didn't think was possible anymore. The room smelled like paint and old wood. A soft hum of voices filled the air. And there they were, 10, maybe 12 other seniors, each holding a brush, each facing a blank canvas. Some had experience, others, like me, just had curiosity. Our teacher, Mr. Flores, was 68 himself. "Forget perfection," he said with a chuckle. "We're not here to paint masterpieces. We're here to feel alive again." And something in me cracked open. He gave us our first assignment. Paint something that reminds you of a memory you cherish. I froze. My hand hovered over the palette. A memory? That felt too personal, too buried. But then, I remembered a beach trip from when my kids were small. The smell of sunscreen, the sound of little feet running on sand, the joy of building a crooked sandcastle. And slowly, my hand moved. As I painted, I realized, this wasn't about talent. It was about remembering, about feeling, about reclaiming pieces of myself I'd forgotten in the busyness of life. And here's what I want to say to you. You don't have to be good to create something beautiful. Sometimes, the beauty lies in the fact that you dared to try. That day, something shifted in me, not everything, but enough to make me want to go back. And what happened on my second visit? That's when I met someone who changed everything. There was something special about the way the teacher greeted each of us by name. "Good morning, Ms. Eleanor. I saved your favorite seat by the window," she'd say with a warm smile. I hadn't heard someone use my name that tenderly in years. It made me feel seen again. Not as a retiree or someone past their prime, but as a person with stories still worth telling. The class wasn't about turning us into professional artists. In fact, most of us hadn't picked up a paintbrush in decades, some never at all. But the magic wasn't in the skill. It was in the way color flowed on the page. The way we got lost in thought while mixing blues and yellows. Creating a green that reminded someone of their childhood backyard. One afternoon, we were painting fruit, and Martha, who always wore blue hats, said her apple looked like a tomato. We all laughed until we cried. That laughter stayed with me the rest of the week. In those moments, I realized something. The class wasn't about art. It was about reconnecting with others. And with ourselves. We started to learn each other's routines. Hank always arrived 5 minutes early and brought ginger candies to share. Nora liked humming while sketching. And if you listened closely, you'd recognize old Sinatra tunes. These weren't just classmates, they were becoming my people. The greatest surprise? The stories. One woman, Lillian, had once worked in a textile factory and secretly designed her own dresses. She never pursued it because, in her words, life got busy. In class, she painted swirls and fabric textures with such joy that I could almost see her younger self in every stroke. And me? I started painting hands. My daughter said, "Mom, why hands?" I told her, "Because they've done so much. And now they're learning something new." I didn't realize until that moment how proud I felt of these hands. By the end of the month, the walls of the classroom were filled with our work. Not masterpieces by any gallery's standards, but they were full of heart. One day, the teacher said, "You all have your own style now." And that hit me, at 70-something. I had style. Who knew? But the real turning point, the part that surprised me most, that's what I'll share in the next part. What surprised me the most wasn't what I created, it was how I felt when I was creating it. One Tuesday morning, as I was sketching a vase of wildflowers, I suddenly realized I hadn't thought about my aching knees, the doctor's appointment next week, or the silence in my living room. I was just here, fully present. That hadn't happened in years. It was like my mind had taken a deep breath. And I wasn't the only one. People started opening up in the gentlest ways. During a break, I asked Nora if she'd always loved to draw. She smiled and said, "I haven't held a pencil like this since my husband passed. I used to sketch him while he read the newspaper." Then she showed me a tiny sketch folded into her wallet, faded, but full of love. That moment stuck with me. Art became a bridge, not just between me and the canvas, but between all of us. We talked about our grandchildren, shared recipes, even debated which paint brand had the richest reds. Hank confessed he used to be a high school teacher, and now he was learning how to mix pastels like a pro. "Never too old to be a beginner," he said with a wink. And it's true. Being a beginner at something again, especially after retirement, felt refreshing. We weren't trying to prove anything to anyone. We were simply creating, laughing, making mistakes, and starting over. One afternoon, our teacher brought in a mirror and said, "Today, we'll paint self-portraits." The room fell silent. Some of us hadn't really looked at ourselves in years. When I looked into the mirror, I saw wrinkles. Yes, but I also saw stories. I saw a woman who raised a family, survived loss, adapted through change, and still had curiosity left in her eyes. Painting that self-portrait was emotional. Not because of how it turned out, but because of what it made me realize. I wasn't invisible. Not to myself, not to this room, not to the world. That day, I wrote something in my notebook. We don't stop creating because we grow old. We grow old when we stop creating. And the truth is, I didn't feel old anymore. But there was still one more surprise, something none of us saw coming. We became a family. Not overnight, of course, but week after week, brushstroke after brushstroke, something shifted. We stopped being strangers with gray hair and arthritis. We became people with names, with stories, with jokes that only made sense if you were there last Tuesday. The art class was supposed to be just a hobby, something to pass the time, but it became my anchor. On days when I felt a little more alone than usual, I knew I could walk into that room and be met with smiles that remembered my name. One chilly Thursday, I showed up late. I had a rough morning and almost stayed home. But when I walked in, they had saved me a seat, right in the middle, by the window, where the light hit just right. Someone had even put out a cup of chamomile tea, just how I liked it. I nearly cried. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a class. It was connection. It was care. And in a world where it's so easy to feel forgotten after 60, that matters more than I can say. We started organizing little art shows in the local library. Nothing fancy, just some frames and finger food. But people came. Kids pointed at our paintings. Neighbors asked questions. And for a moment, we weren't retirees or seniors, we were artists. That sense of purpose, of being seen, is something I hadn't realized I was missing. Retirement had given me freedom. Yes, but it had also quietly taken away structure, routine, and a sense of identity. This class gave it all back. Not through lectures or goals or deadlines, but through kindness, through paint-splattered aprons, through someone remembering how I liked my tea. If you're watching this and wondering if it's too late to find your people, to rediscover what makes your heart light up, I'm here to tell you it's not. Sometimes all it takes is picking up a brush. So tell me, have you ever joined a group like this? Or is there something creative you've always wanted to try but never did? If this story reminded you of someone, or made you feel something, leave a comment below. Let's make this space our own little corner of connection. And if you liked this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'll be here, sharing more stories, one sketch at a time. We're never too old to surprise ourselves.